You open your retirement account. The number rises and falls with the market. Part of every paycheck goes into it. Your employer may add some money too. You are told to keep contributing, keep investing, and one day, after decades of work, this account may help you retire. For millions of Americans, that account is a 401k. It feels like a permanent part of working life. But before 1978, it did not exist. There was no 401k contribution on a paycheck, no company match, no online account showing stocks, bonds, and retirement funds. Yet people still grew old. They still stopped working, or tried to. So how did Americans retire before the 401k? Who paid their bills? What happened if they had no pension? And why did a small section of the tax code eventually change retirement for millions of workers? The first answer is uncomfortable. For much of American history, many people did not retire in the way we understand retirement today. They worked for as long as their bodies allowed. A farmer might reduce his workload but continue helping on the land. A shopkeeper might work fewer hours. A craftsman might depend on younger relatives to handle the hardest tasks. For many people, old age was not a separate stage of life filled with travel, hobbies, and freedom. It was simply a slower and more difficult part of working life. If an older person could no longer work, the family often became the retirement system. Adult children provided food. A relative offered a room. A family farm supported several generations. A widow might move into the home of a son or daughter. This support could be loving. It could also create pressure, conflict, and dependence. The older person had little financial independence if the family had little money. Those without family faced even fewer choices. Some lived on personal savings. Some owned land or rental property. Some received help from churches, charities, or local communities. Others entered poorhouses. These were local institutions for people who could not support themselves. Conditions were often harsh. The elderly could be housed beside people who were sick, disabled, homeless, or mentally ill. Old age itself could become a form of poverty. There were also early government pensions, but they were not for everyone. After the Civil War, the federal government paid pensions to many Union veterans and their survivors. For some older Americans, a military pension provided reliable income. But a person normally needed a qualifying military connection. The system was not a general retirement plan for every worker. Private companies also began experimenting with pensions. In the late 19th century, a small number of large employers created retirement plans for long-serving workers. These early pensions were rare. They often depended completely on the employer. The company decided who qualified. It decided how long a worker had to stay. And in some cases, it could change or end the promise. A worker who left too early might receive nothing. A worker who was dismissed before retirement could lose years of expected benefits. A company pension could provide security, but only if the company remained successful and kept its promise. Most workers still had no formal retirement plan. They depended on savings, family, property, or continued work. Then the Great Depression exposed how fragile that system was. The stock market crashed in 1929. Banks failed. Savings disappeared. Businesses closed. Millions lost their jobs. Older workers faced a special problem. They were often among the first to be pushed out of work, and once unemployed, they found it difficult to get hired again. A 65-year-old person could still be willing to work, but willingness did not create a job. Families that once supported older relatives were now struggling to feed themselves. Local charities were overwhelmed. Savings that had taken a lifetime to build could disappear when a bank failed. The country began asking a new question. Should survival in old age depend only on savings, family, and the decisions of private employers? Franklin Roosevelt's administration offered a national answer. In 1935, Roosevelt signed the Social Security Act. The new system collected payroll taxes from workers and employers. Those taxes helped fund monthly benefits for eligible retired workers. Social Security was not designed to provide a wealthy retirement. It was meant to create a basic floor. A person might still need savings, family support, or a pension, but old age would no longer depend entirely on those things. The first monthly Social Security retirement payments began in 1940. One of the first recipients was Ida Mae Fuller, a retired legal secretary from Vermont. Her first monthly check was $22.54. That amount sounds tiny today, but the importance was much larger than the check. For the first time, the federal government was sending regular retirement income to eligible workers across the country. Social Security changed retirement, but it did not solve everything. Not every worker was included at the beginning. Many agricultural and domestic workers were initially excluded. That left out large numbers of black workers and many women. Coverage expanded later. Even for those who qualified, Social Security was never meant to replace an entire working income. Americans still needed another source of money. For many workers, that source became the company pension. Employer pensions expanded greatly during and after the Second World War. Companies were competing for workers. Unions were demanding better benefits. Government wage controls made it harder for employers to attract workers simply by raising salaries. So companies increasingly offered benefits, including pensions. The most common traditional pension promised a monthly payment after retirement. The amount was usually based on the worker's salary and the number of years spent with the company. The employer managed the pension money. The employer carried the investment risk. If the investments performed poorly, the worker's promised benefit did not automatically fall. This arrangement later became known as a defined benefit pension. The benefit was defined in advance. The worker knew the formula. Stay with the company long enough, reach retirement age, then receive a monthly payment, often for the rest of your life. For workers who qualified, this could be powerful. A retired household might combine Social Security with a company pension and personal savings. Together, these three sources became a common picture of retirement security. But the pension system had serious weaknesses. First, many workers had no pension at all. Small employers often did not offer one. Many lower-paid jobs did not include one. Women who moved in and out of paid work to care for children could struggle to qualify. Black workers were often concentrated in jobs that offered fewer benefits. Second, pensions rewarded long service with one company. A worker might need to stay for many years before earning a permanent right to the benefit. That permanent right is called vesting. If the worker left too soon, the expected pension could disappear. This made changing jobs expensive. The worker was not only leaving a salary, the worker might also be leaving future retirement income. Third, a pension was only as secure as the plan behind it. A company could make promises for decades, but what happened if the company failed? Workers at the Studebaker automobile plant learned the answer in 1963. When the company closed its plant in South Bend, Indiana, the pension plan did not have enough money to pay every promised benefit in full. Thousands of workers lost some or all of the retirement income they expected. Some had spent most of their adult lives with the company. The promise looked real until the money was not there. The Studebaker collapse became a national warning. A pension promise needed rules, it needed protection, and workers needed clearer rights. In 1974, Congress passed the Employee Retirement Income Security Act. The law is commonly known by the spoken name ERISA. It created federal standards for many private pension plans. It required more information for workers. It established rules for the people managing retirement money. It improved vesting protections, and it created a federal insurance system for many traditional pensions if a covered plan failed. ERISA made pensions safer. But another change was already beginning. American work was becoming less stable. People were changing employers more often. Companies were becoming less comfortable promising monthly pension checks for the rest of a worker's life. A traditional pension created a long-term cost. The company had to estimate how long workers would live. It had to invest enough money, and it had to make sure the pension fund could meet promises many years into the future. Businesses wanted a system with a more predictable cost. Workers wanted retirement money that could move more easily when they changed jobs. Then Congress passed the Revenue Act of 1978. Inside that large tax law was a small provision connected to Section 401, Paragraph K of the tax code. That is where the name 401k comes from. The provision allowed certain employees to choose between receiving some compensation as cash or placing it into a tax-favored retirement plan. At the time, this did not look like the birth of a new American retirement system. It was a technical tax rule. Most workers had never heard of it. Most employers did not immediately know what to do with it. The person who saw its wider possibility was a benefits consultant named Ted Benna. In 1980, Benna was working with retirement plan rules when he noticed something important. The new provision could allow ordinary employees to place part of their salary into a retirement account before income tax was applied to that contribution. The employer could also encourage participation by adding matching money. Benna first designed the idea for a client. The client decided not to use it. so Benna introduced the plan at his own workplace. Employees could choose to contribute part of their pay. The company would add money according to the plan's matching formula. The account belonged to the employee under the plan's rules. The money could be invested and grow over time. This was very different from the traditional pension. A pension promised a future monthly benefit. A 401k did not promise a specific retirement income. It promised contributions into an individual account. The final value depended on how much went in, how long the money remained invested, which investments were chosen, how the market performed, and how much was removed before or during retirement. The employer's responsibility became more limited. It could contribute money, it could provide the plan, but it did not have to promise one fixed monthly payment for the rest of the worker's life. The investment risk moved toward the employee. If the market performed well, the account could grow strongly. If the market fell near retirement, the account could lose value at the worst possible time. If the worker contributed too little, the final balance might not be enough. If the worker removed the money early, retirement security could weaken. This was not simply a new pension, it was a new division of responsibility. In 1981, the Internal Revenue Service issued rules that helped clarify how these salary deferral plans could operate. After that, employers began adopting 401k plans much more quickly. The timing suited the changes already happening in business. Companies wanted to reduce the uncertainty of traditional pension promises. Workers were changing jobs more often. 401k accounts were easier to carry from one job to another. Financial companies saw a large new market. Mutual funds, investment managers, consultants, and record-keeping firms built services around the plans. The 401k grew from an obscure tax provision into one of the main retirement tools in the United States. But the shift created a major difference between generations. Under a traditional pension, the employer decided how much money was needed to support the promised benefit. Professional managers invested the pension fund. The retired worker received the promised monthly amount, subject to the plan's terms. Under a 401k, the worker must make several important decisions. How much should be contributed? Which funds should be selected? How much risk is appropriate? When should investments become safer? How much can be withdrawn each year after retirement? A person can work hard for 40 years and still face a poor result if contributions are too low, fees are too high, investments perform badly, or money is withdrawn too early. The 401k also works best for people who have enough income to contribute consistently. A worker struggling with rent, food, medical bills, and debt may understand the importance of saving, but still have little money left to invest. An employer match can help, but not every employer offers the same match, and not every job offers a 401k at all. The system rewards steady contributions over many years, yet many working lives are not steady. People lose jobs, they become sick, they care for relatives, they face emergencies. They withdraw retirement money because the need today feels more urgent than the need decades later. That does not mean the 401k is a failure. For many workers, it has created substantial retirement savings. It gives people direct ownership of an account. It can move with them when they change jobs. It allows tax advantages. And employer contributions can add meaningful value. But it does mean the 401k solved a different problem from the traditional pension. The pension asked the employer to promise an income. The 401k asks the worker to build an account. One system placed more responsibility on the company. The other placed more responsibility on the individual. So how did people retire before 1978? There was no single answer. Many worked until they could no longer continue. Many depended on adult children or other relatives. Some lived from savings, property, or farm income. Some received military pensions. Some had company pensions. After 1940, many received Social Security. By the post-war years, workers with good jobs might retire with both Social Security and a traditional pension. Others had very little. The 401k did not invent retirement. It changed who managed the money and who carried the risk. It also changed the language of retirement. Workers once asked, "How much will my pension pay each month?" Now many ask, "How much is in my account?" Those questions sound similar. They are not. A monthly pension is a promise of income. An account balance is a pool of money that must last through an unknown number of years. A large balance can still disappear through poor timing, high withdrawals, medical costs, or a long life. A modest pension can continue arriving month after month. Each system has strengths, each has weaknesses, and neither private employers nor the federal government built retirement security alone. Families supported older relatives long before national programs existed. Workers and unions fought for pensions. Employers created benefit plans. Government laws created Social Security, tax advantages, pension standards, and insurance. Financial markets helped retirement money grow. The modern system is the result of all of them. Today, many Americans approach retirement with several sources of support: Social Security, a 401k or similar account, perhaps an older pension, personal savings, home equity, or continued part-time work. The mix is different for every household, but the central problem has not changed. Work eventually ends. The bills do not. That is why the history of the 401k matters. It is not only the history of a tax code, it is the history of a much larger change. The company once carried more of the responsibility for creating retirement income. Today, the worker often carries more of it. The next time you look at a 401k balance, remember what the number represents. It is money, but it is also time. Years of contributions, years of market gains and losses, years in which you chose to spend less now in the hope of having more later. Before 1978, Americans retired through family support, savings, Social Security, pensions, property, and often continued work. Then, one small tax provision offered another path. That path grew. Traditional pensions declined, and the personal retirement account moved toward the center of American working life. The 401k did not make retirement simple. It made retirement personal, and that changed who carries the promise.